Okay. Now, this week's Parsha, Parshas Shlach, is chock full of stuff to talk about. So, number one, we're going to talk about the biggie, which is the story of how Moshe sends the spies to scout out the land of Israel. And we're going to talk and what went wrong and why it went wrong and why did they go in the first place. And most important, what can we learn from it?
Why do they call them spies?
Instead
Why
of
can't
scouts,
they just be people
explorers
in the desert, coming into town, checking things out?
Okay, so that's a good question because in the Hebrew we don't call them spies. We call them miraglim, which has the word regel. Regel means what? Foot, okay, which means people that traverse the land. So they're not called spies. In the translation into English and in the teaching of it over the millennia, we call them spies. But in the Hebrew, we call them miraglim, which does not mean spies. Okay, it means...
I mean, even God says, send them out to explore.
Explorers, right? We call them explorers. We call them scouters. We do not call them spies. Okay? But what ended up happening is that the way they behaved or the way they took on the mission was they came back with this espionage story that, there's a big problem here. But that's a good question. Okay. So we're going to speak about the spies and their report, and then we're going to speak about when they hear the report, what the people do, which was not very good. Moshe tries to calm the situation, and because of this terrible story, what happens?
They stay in the desert for 40 years.
They stay in the desert for 40 years. Now, do they end up staying 40 more years?
No, because they die.
Is the decree for 40 more years?
No, it's a total.
It's a total 40 years. So they are already in the desert for some time. So about 2 years, or maybe a year and a half, actually. But they're not going to be, it's not another 40 years. God, in his kindness, says, okay, the total, what you did already also counts.
How long were they at Sinai?
They were at Sinai for a few days. Actually, no. They were there until he came down with the tablets. They were there for a few weeks.
Okay. Yeah.
40 days, or a little more than that, maybe 50 days. Okay, so then you have the decree of the 40 years, and then you have a variety of mitzvahs, one of which is
Separating the challah,
which I would like to talk about just because it's such a relevant thing for us women. And then you have a variety of different. You have offerings. You also have the first Shabbos desecration, which is by a man named Tzlafchad, and he's the guy whose daughters then fight for their father's share in the land. And the last mitzvah we have is the mitzvah of tzitzis. And the mitzvah of tzitzis is, in brief, the strings that we attach to any four-cornered garment. So if you never have a four-cornered garment, biblically, you never have to wear tzitzis. But rabbinically, the rabbis ordained that we wear a talis during prayer, or a talit katan, which is what is worn as a personal garment. And the message of the strings is to remind you of the mitzvahs. That when a man or a boy sees these strings, he sees them and he remembers to do the mitzvahs. In other words, the idea behind this, and this is just in a nutshell, and we'll go back to it soon, the idea behind these strings is that everything of desire begins with the eyes. You see something, you begin to think about it, you want it, and then you do everything in your power to get it. So the Torah tells you at the outset, take a look at these strings, keep this in mind, and don't go after the attractions of your eyes. Okay, so that is the message of tzitzis. And we'll talk about it. Okay, so the story of the scouts or the explorers. What happened was the Jews are poised to go into the land. We're standing ready to go in, and a group of people approach Moshe and say, we're getting ready to go in the land. Do you think it would be okay if we sent a group of people to take a look at the topography, to take a look at the people, so we can figure out how we
can inhabit the land.
How can inhabit the land? What's the best way to get in? What should be some of our strategy? And Moshe thought for a minute and said, I never thought of it. I don't know. Let me check with my boss. So Moshe goes and checks with the boss, and in what could only be considered a mother's response, he said, I'm not telling you what to do. If you want, send. If you don't want, don't send. I'm not telling you what to do. Okay. Now, if you had to guess, what would be the right thing? I'm not telling you what to do.
Don't do it.
Okay. So we have two
Or
votes here.
I would think, have faith in me, and
Right.
just, you're just keep going. You're supposed to have faith in me, and so why do you have to
Yes.
check it out first,
Okay.
Because you're going anyway.
Right. So there is a strong pull to believe that if God is giving you the land, He'll help you get in there.
You don't really need to go spy because God
Yeah.
had already made plans for you.
Okay. Okay. And that's the very simple approach. Why didn't Moshe say no? Why didn't he say no?
Because he always
they were
wants to
begging
please
him.
everybody,
To,
I think.
Okay, so Lynn says because he always wants to please everybody, but he never wants to allow people to do the wrong thing. And if it was wrong, 100% wrong,
And God would have said
then
no.
God would have said no.
Yeah.
Or Moshe would have said absolutely not, no.
And later, Yehoshua does it, and it's the right thing to do.
Okay, and that is really juxtaposed against this, okay? Let's, for those of you who don't know this, okay? These 12 guys go, they come back 40 days later, catastrophe. And we'll go into the details about what happens. But 40 years, now, who goes? 12 people go, among them Joshua, and among them Caleb. So Joshua and Caleb are amongst this group of 12 who mess up, but they're the two that don't mess up.
And Joshua and Caleb belong to...
Joshua was the tribe of Ephraim,
And Caleb's Yehuda.
and Caleb is Judah. Joshua is Moses's personal, devoted, devout student, who then becomes the leader to lead the Jews into Israel. And Caleb was the one, because of the way he acted in this mission, he did not die out in the 40 years of the desert, but he was able to go along into the land.
Into the land.
Now, when the Jews are waiting at the Jordan River to go into the land, Moses had already passed. Joshua is the leader, and Joshua probably remembers what happened 38 and a half years ago, where he was part of the scouting mission and it didn't end so well. And Joshua says, God actually tells, if I'm not mistaken, does God tell Joshua? Or God, I think so too. God tells Joshua, send 2 spies or send 2 scouts. And he chooses, maybe God didn't tell him. We could check that up real quick. Caleb and Pinchas. So all these guys that were involved 40 years before are now sending scouts. And how did that mission work out? Beautifully.
Yeah.
It worked out wonderfully. So it could, if the mission idea itself was a bad idea, Joshua probably wouldn't have done it. But if you juxtapose the 2 stories one against the other, why did one work and why did the other one not work? It had to do with intentions. Excellent. It had to do with intentions. And it also had to do with something else.
Joshua and Caleb had protection from prayer because Moses prayed for Joshua to be successful, and Caleb went to Hebron to pray at Abraham's grave.
Okay.
So they had fortified themselves.
Good. They had fortified themselves, but good.
They were a little distracted or separated from the group, right? Or did
Yes,
Joshua
yes.
stay with them?
No, they all went together.
I thought
In the
one of them
initial-
went off, like you said, to pray at the.
Oh,
Yeah,
Caleb,
so
he
he
did.
wasn't really with them, was he? I mean, he went off to pray. Did he circle the buildings or not?
They all traversed the
They did,
land,
okay.
but Caleb made a
Yeah.
point to go to the caves of the patriarchs, and as Marlene said before they left, and we will read this, Moses prayed for Joshua, and he prayed, please God, save this gentleman from what could possibly happen. So the trip, the outing was fraught with a lot of complexity and apprehension in some way, which is probably why Moshe said, do what you want, I'm not telling you what to do. But there had to be something right about the trip, otherwise Moshe and God would have said, no way. So it's a little bit tricky, and we're going to talk about it. I just want to grab a book of Joshua and see how the book starts. Actually, if we all want to take a look at it, it's the Haftorah of this week. Um,
1451.
There she goes. The only thing is, it doesn't start at the beginning of the. Page 1451. I'm going to see if I can find the book of Joshua. Okay, so it's page 1451. Okay, Yehoshua, the son of Nun, sent 2 men from Shittim to spy out the mindset of the land's inhabitants, saying, go and see the land of Jericho. They went and came to the house of a lady named Rachav, who sold food, and they slept there. A messenger informed the king of Jericho, saying, behold, men from the children of Israel have come here tonight to search the land. The king of Jericho sent a message to Rachav, saying, release the men who have come to you that have entered your house, for they have come to search the land. The woman who had taken the 2 men had hidden each one separately. She said, yes, the men came to me. I didn't know where they were from. When it was time to close the city gate at night, the men went off. I don't know where they went. So she was protecting them.
Why?
Yeah. How did
She was
know?
a good lady. She was a good lady.
How did she know she had to protect him?
So there was a lot of buzz that the Jews were coming to take over to conquer the land, and anybody who had a sense of morality and ethics was whoever didn't have this sense of morality and ethics was going to fight it. But whoever did have that feeling that this is God's land and he's going to give it to the Jews, and if we do what we have to make them be able to inhabit the land, we don't have to worry about our own safety. So in fact, you'll see she asks them to promise that for what she did for them, that their families will be saved, and she was saved. Her inn, so to speak, was actually part of the wall of Jericho. It's like this, you know, if you've seen these huge walls around the city, and this was a home that was like built as part, like one of the walls of the city was a wall of her house.
Wow.
Okay? And so when that was the first place they came to, and she greeted them and was very nice to them. Okay, let's read further. So the woman, I don't know where they went. It wasn't long ago, she said. So if you chase after them quickly, you'll catch them. In other words, she was wise, and they were still hiding upstairs. But she said, you know, it wasn't a long time, so go chase them. So that she distracted them. She had taken them up to the roof and hidden them well in the flax stalks that were arranged upon the roof. The king's men pursued them in the direction of the Jordan until the river crossings. As soon as the pursuers had gone out, the gate was shut. Before the spies were asleep, she came to them on the roof. She said to the men, on page 1452, I know that God has given you the land, and that the dread of you has fallen upon us. In other words, the entire Canaanite people are terrified of you. All the inhabitants of the land have melted away because of you. We know you guys are coming with God, you are strong. We're afraid. For we have heard how God dried up the water of the Reed Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, only 40 years earlier, and what you did to the two kings of the Amorites that were on the other side of the Jordan, Sihon and Og, and this was maybe just several months ago or a year, whom you completely destroyed. And as soon as we heard, our hearts melted. Because of you, everybody was downhearted. For God, your almighty God, is almighty in heaven above and on the earth below. Now I beg, swear to me by God, since I have shown you kindness, that you will also show kindness to my father's house, and give me a true sign so that we will not be harmed. And so you will keep alive my father and my mother and my brothers and my sisters, and preserve all that they have. Deliver our lives from death. In other words, we're not troublemakers. We're not against you. We are in awe of you. We're happy to help. Please don't kill us out. The men said to her, we pledge our lives to defend yours from death if you will not tell anybody about this discussion of ours. Then what will happen is, when God gives us the land, we will deal with you kindly and truly. So she let them down by a rope, okay, on the outside, to the window out of town, for her house was in the town wall, and she dwelt in the wall. She said to them, go to the mountain, in case the pursuers catch you. In other words, don't go right back to the border where you came from. Go hide for a few days till they tire of looking for you. Hide yourself there for 3 days until the pursuers return, once these guys come home, and afterwards go on your way. The men said to her, we want to be blameless of not fulfilling your oath, which you have made us swear, so we will make ourselves clear. When we come into the land, bind this line of scarlet thread in the window by which you let us down, and bring your father and your mother and your brothers and your entire family, father's household, home to you. So this is what I need you to do. You hang this red ribbon from the window that we just came out of. Your entire family should be here. Don't let them be scattered throughout the country. Then if anyone goes out the doors of your house, his blood will be upon his own, like he's responsible for himself, and we will be blameless. But whoever will be with you in the house, his blood will be upon our head, if a hand is laid upon him. And if you tell anyone of this discussion of ours, then we will be blameless of your oath which you have made us swear. She left. She said, it will be as you say. She sent them off, and they left. And later, when the Jewish army invaded, she bound the scarlet line in the window. She went and came to the mount. They went and came to the mountain and stayed there 3 days, and the pursuers returned. The pursuers chased them all the way, but they did not find them. The 2 men returned and came down from the mountain. They crossed over and came to Yehoshua, the son of Nun, and told him all that had happened to them. They said to Yehoshua, God has delivered all the land into our hands. Also all the land's inhabitants melted in fear of us. So what they checked out was perfect, okay? And these guys could have also checked out what was perfect. I mean, they could have come back with the same conclusion. So let's start here. So we see that although this story had a terrible ending, the following story did not have a terrible ending, and therefore we see that this could have also worked out fine. But the question is, why didn't it?
People didn't want to.
Okay, very good. So, like Karen and Lynn are saying, their intention was wrong, and perhaps they weren't mature, or they had to go through this learning lesson beforehand.
Perhaps
Okay?
they'd been spoiled.
Excellent. They had been. They had been. They had been, and okay, we'll talk about it. Let's go. God spoke to Moshe saying, "Send out men for yourself to explore the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the children of Israel. Send 1 man for each paternal tribe. Each one should be a leader among them." Now, this is the thing. If here, when you read it in English, it says, God speaks to Moshe saying, "Send out men for yourself." But if you look at Rashi says, I'm going to ask you to look at it, even though you may not be able to read it 100% well.
What page are we on?
We're on page 940. After you have the text, then you have a little thin line, and that is a little thin section that's called Rashi. If you look at the 3rd line, you will see the 2 words of the verse, Shlach Lecha. Do you see that? Shlach Lecha. Within the Rashi. Marlene, can you show Ava?
Yeah, I'm getting there.
Okay.
9:40.
Do you see it, Deborah?
Yeah.
Cool.
It's very small.
It's very small.
Very small.
Aviva, can you show Deborah and Patty?
So this is the part from the verse, and then this is the Rashi. Okay.
So this is the Rashi. That's the Rashi.
Okay.
And that's,
Okay, do you see it, Karen?
Wow.
Deborah,
third
can you
line.
show Karen? Yes, the 3rd line, okay? So, Shalach Lecha is in regular Hebrew letters. That's the quote that Rashi takes out of the verse. And then you have the Rashi letters that tell you Rashi's commentary on these words. Shlach Lecha means send out for yourself. Rashi says, what does it mean, send out for yourself? Lida'atcha. Lida'atcha means according to how you understand it. Like the word da'at or da'as, your understanding. Ani eini mitzvah lecha. I, God says, I'm not commanding you, mitzvah like mitzvah. I'm not commanding you. Im tirtzeh shlach, if you want to send, lefi sheba'u Yisrael, because the Jews came, ve'amru nishlacha anashim lefanenu, we will send men before us, kama shenemar, like it says, vatikru vonei kulchem. This story is retold in the book of Deuteronomy, and Rashi quotes the way the story unfolds in Deuteronomy, that Moshe says to the people, you came to me and you said, we want to send people. Moshe nimlach b'shchina. Moshe goes and asks, he consults with God. Amar, God said, Ani amarti lahem shehi tova. I told them, all the people, all the folks, the land is good. There's nothing to check. Okay? Shenemar, like it says, Ala eschem me'oni Mitzrayim. I took you out from the the poverty of Egypt, and I'm going to bring you to this bountiful land. Chayehem, but God says, I promise, or I swear, or by my life, Shani nosei lahem makom litos. I'm going to give them the opportunity to make a big boo-boo, to make a mistake. In other words, I told you it's good.
Set them up.
I told you it's good. You still don't believe me? If you want, you can take it for a test drive. But I'm warning you, so to speak, that it's not going to be such a simple, smooth ride. Okay, so chayehem, by my life, shani nosein lahem makom latos, I'm going to give them room to err, b'divrei hamaraglim, by the words of the spies, laman lo yirashua, and perhaps they won't inherit the land. Okay, so it's not nice if someone gives you a gift and you say, well, let me check it out, right? In Yiddish, there's an expression, a geschenken empfährt, zählt man nicht die Zähne. If somebody gifts you a horse, right, it's very inappropriate to open, the person gives you the horse, you tell me if this is nice, somebody gives you a beautiful horse as a gift, and you open the horse's mouth and you start counting the horse's teeth. Right? You know, you're checking out how good of a horse the gift is, or whatever it is. Someone gives you a gift, and especially someone special who could give you the best gift ever, don't start counting the teeth. You know, don't start, say thank you and appreciate the value of the gift. So here we have a precarious situation. But the question is, God could have said no, right? If it's really not nice, why did God say, like moms are wont to say, I'm not telling you what to do. If you want, you could do it. If you don't want, you don't, whatever you want. Why?
He had
Gives
to
you
have
freedom
known.
of choice.
She gives you freedom of choice, okay. But in that freedom of choice, you hear her opinion. Right? And that's how we all have the impression that it wasn't such a good idea. But they wanted to do it. It's like, again, in other places it's described as test driving. Somebody, and in fact, perhaps Moshe thought, and there's discussion along this line as well, if Moshe would have said to them, no, you can't do it, what might they have said? Then we don't
Doing
want
it
to go.
anyhow.
We don't want to go. What might they have said? What happens if you come to a car lot and the salesperson, exactly, the salesperson is telling you the qualities of this car, and you say, oh great, can I take it out for a little drive? And he says, no, you can't. No. You think something's wrong.
Right.
So, at risk of them saying, there's a problem with the land, Moshe almost was forced to say, if you want, sure. And of course he hoped that they would say, what's there to see? What's there to see? God promised them the beautiful land. God promised us this beautiful land. Promised it already to our patriarchs and matriarchs. Okay, we're going to zoom through the story and see what happened, and then we're going to talk about why it happened and what we can learn from it. That's the most important thing. So let's go. Moshe sent them by the word of God. I'm on line 4, verse 3. Moshe sent them by the word of God from the desert of Paran. All of them were men of distinction. Okay, these were tzaddikim.
Right.
When it says, Shlach lecha anoshim, send for yourselves anoshim, people, there are many ways in the Torah to use the the language lends itself to use many kinds of words. You can call it an Adam, you can call it a Ish, like Anashim, you could call it Gever. There are many words to be used for people or men. The word Anashim is a very honorable, respectable title, and usually when it uses the word, the Torah uses this word, it means they were men of distinction. They were they were tzaddikim. They were great men. So it's not like he sent troublemakers and they came. What are you going to do? They came back with in trouble. They were the heads of the children of Israel. Each tribe sent their leader. For the tribe of Ruvain, Shamua the son of Zachar. For the tribe of Shimon, Shaphat the son of Hori. For the tribe of Judah, Kalev the son of Yefunah. For the tribe of Yisachar, Yigal the son of Yosef. For the tribe of Ephraim, Hoshea the son of Nun. For the tribe of Binyamin, Palti the son of Raphu. For the tribe of Zebulun, Gadiel the son of Sodi. For the tribe of Yosef, the tribe of Menashe, Gadi the son of Susi. For the tribe of Dan, Amiel the son of Gamali. For the tribe of Asher, Sisor the son of Michael. For the tribe of Naphtali, Nachbi the son of Vavsi. For the tribe of Gad, Kevuel the son of Machi. These were the names of the men that Moshe sent to explore the land. Moshe called Hoshea the son of Nun Yehoshua. Okay? He changed his name. And with the changing of the name, he inserted the prayer, God should save you from the ideas of the other spies.
Wow.
His name used to be Hoshea, and Moshe took the Yud, that is an emblem of God's name, and added it at the beginning of the name, and it became Yehoshua. And he said, God ka Yoshiacha, God should save you, spare you, rescue you from the ideas of this group.
Wow.
Okay, Moshe sent them to explore the land of Canaan. He said to them, go up this way along the south border until you reach the sea, and then go up the west coast until you reach Hamas, which is by the Chor mountain. See what kind of land it is. Are the people who inhabit it strong or weak? Are they a few or of them or many? How is the land which they inhabit? Does it have good spring wells or bad ones? How are the cities in which they live? Are they in an unenclosed or in fortresses? What is the soil like? Is it fertile or barren? Are there righteous people? Are there trees? Be courageous and take some of the land's fruit. It was the season when the first grapes ripened. They went up and explored the land from the desert of Tzin until Rehov at the approach to Hamas. Now, the first thing you come to when you come into Israel from the south is Hebron, because Hebron is in the south. And by the way, okay, let's just continue reading. Okay, so they come to the south, and there's Hebron. So Caleb says, you know what? I'm going to hop in and pray on the way. I'm going to go to Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Leah, and put in a good word for our people and for the success of this trip. The giants, Achiman, Sheshai, and Talmai were there. Now, here is, the Torah inserts a little FYI and tells us like this. They're traveling in Hebron. I want you readers to know that Hebron was the rockiest part of the land of Israel, and yet it was 7 times more cultivated than Soan, which is the best part of Egypt. So this is parentheses, FYI to the reader. Why? What is it telling us? Hebron is the rockiest, most unfavorable in terms of land and development. It's not a great space. And how do we know that? We turned it into a cemetery, right? You don't give the best fertile land in any development for a cemetery. You take the land that you can't do much else with, and you use that for a cemetery. and we say that this land, Hebron, was 7 times more cultivated and more beautiful than Soan in Egypt, and Soan is considered the most beautiful part of Egypt. Just to give the listeners or the readers who are going through the story a little heads up as to how beautiful and special this land is. Okay? They came to the valley of Eshcol. Oh, okay. Now, by the way, it does say here, before this beautiful piece about Hebron, it says, the giants, Achiman, Sheshai, and Talmai were there. So they did see big people. Okay? They came to the valley of Eshcol, and they cut a branch with a cluster of grapes. Big grapes. They carried it on 2 double poles. They also took pomegranates and figs. They called that place the valley of Eshcol because of the cluster, Eshcol, the children of Israel cut from there. Now, just without any explanation, you see, it's big. It's a place that cultivates big. There's huge clusters of grapes that you have to carry on 2 poles, 4 people carrying the cluster. Wow, big grapes.
4 poles, 2 people carrying the cluster.
They got giants.
No, two poles.
I thought you said 2 double poles.
No.
2 double poles, yes. So that's 4 poles.
That's right.
4 poles, and actually 8 people were carrying the clusters. That's how, carrying big fruits. And they saw the giants. So this tells us the land is such a good, healthy land that everything that grows there flourishes. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
A good thing.
Depends how you look at it, right? If you look at it and you say, wow, when we get here, look what we're going to be. We're going to have this great opportunity. We're going to grow. Our kids are going to grow. The produce is going to be amazing. That's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is, yikes, I'm terrified.
About those giants.
I'm terrified.
Right.
The giants, the land, it's so big. It's so overwhelming. Okay? Same thing. Is the glass half full? Is the glass half empty? Now here's their report. Now I just want to say one very important thing. It would have taken them 160 days to go through the entire land, up and down. Okay? It would have taken them 160 is 4 times 4? 40
Yes.
times 4? Okay. Up, here, every direction would have taken them 160 days. Now, God, in his infinite kindness, who also knew the end of the story before it happened, said, I'm going to shorten the trip for them because I don't want to have to keep them in the desert for 160 years. Okay, so just a little detail. At the end of 40 days, they returned from scouting the land. They went, as Karen and Lynn said, with bad intentions, and their intentions were still bad when they came to Moshe and Aaron and the entire congregation of the children of Israel in Kadesh in the desert of Paran. Now, before we go on to finish the story, my question to you is, why would good men go with bad intentions?
They were lazy. They knew that they'd have to work and get all their stuff once they entered the land. And when they were out in the land, they were getting everything from God. They didn't have to get their food. They didn't have to change their clothes.
Okay, did everybody hear what Lynn said? Okay, she said they were lazy and they didn't want to work.
But they were the best of the best.
Okay,
They
so
wanted to take a shortcut.
okay, so here is what you're saying.
They wanted a shortcut because they didn't want to do the work. They just wanted to read what other people had done.
Okay, very good. So here is what you're saying is right. Just want to tweak it a little bit. When the Jews were in the desert, they had the best of both worlds. What are the both worlds?
The spiritual and the material.
Exactly. They had the spirituality. It doesn't get more spiritual than God tapping Moses on the shoulder and speaking to him, and Moshe coming and telling the rest of us what God just told him. Okay? It doesn't get more spiritual than that. It doesn't get more spiritual than having your bread come down from heaven every single morning. Literally heaven. You're eating a piece of heaven. Okay? It doesn't get more spiritual than that. And on the other hand, also, you have what to eat. You're not hungry. You have your water coming from a rock. You have your teacher, Moses, teaching you, inspiring you. You have you're in this little bubble that travels and gets rid of all the snakes and the scorpions. You have nothing physical or spiritual to worry about.
Are they told ahead of time that once they go into the land, God cuts off the manna and
Yes,
all the food
yes,
and everything? So they
yes.
know this beforehand. When they go in there, they know this is going to be your land, and
You're gonna have to
you
work.
got to take over now.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So these righteous men, right? They're righteous. The Torah tells us they're righteous. They say, you know what? I don't want that. I don't want that. We want this.
They wanted to stay in the
This
desert.
is where it's at.
Living the good life.
Living the good life. But it wasn't only that they didn't have to do their laundry. They didn't have to do their laundry. Great. They didn't have to worry about food. Great. But the bottom line is because they didn't have to do their laundry, because they didn't have to worry about food, their existence was elevated. They could sit and study Torah all day. They could bask in God's glory literally. You go into the Mishkan, you're in a different plane. So they wanted that connection. And they realized that once, this is like living in the womb. The baby doesn't have to do anything. The mother's food comes to it, her, him. It's warm and cozy and cuddly and spiritual. A machaya. Right? A machaya. But there's a time where the umbilical cord has to be cut, the baby is ousted. What does the baby do? Screams, yeah. I don't like it, I don't like it, I don't like it, I don't want to be here. Right? And these men did not want to go into the land and be connected to a physical land that would require them. Now, it's not so much that they were afraid of hard work. It's not so much the laziness, the physical laziness. It's the spiritual laziness. It's how do you find God in a piece of bread that you seeded and you watered and you took it out and you harvested and you ground it and you baked it and you. Where do you see the spirituality in that? Where do you see? We're going to have time. You're going to have to get up early in the morning and go work. You're going to have to find time to daven in the middle of it all. You're going to be making choices all the time. Am I this or am I that? Am I going here? Am I going there? There's no choices here. It's all wholesome, spiritual, wonderful. And they didn't want to leave the desert. They wanted to stay in this wholesome, womb-like, in this embryonic place. But God said to them, you got to grow up. You got to grow up. And this is also why when God said to them, when they said, no, they were crying, we don't want to go, we don't want to go. God said, you know what? You're right, you're not going to go. You guys are too immature for this kind of work. Right? I see, you can't handle it. I see Caleb can handle it. He went and he came like a mensch. I see Joshua can handle it. He left and he came like a mensch. But I see you guys, you're too immature. You want to hold on to mommy's apron string. You can't, okay. You're not going to, you don't want to go. You can't go. So this was a spiritual confrontation. A difference of opinions, where most of the people, most of the spies or the scouts or whatever we want to call them, went in thinking, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. How are we going to be able to work through this? How are we going to be able to live godly with all the physical challenges that the world, even the land of Israel, you have to, you got to go out there and slay the dragons and fight the battles and bake and cook, and these are all metaphoric, obviously. It's too
Do they
hard.
know that Moses is not going in with them at that point?
At this
Are they
point,
afraid they're going to be on their own and they're not going to have him?
At this point, I don't think they know.
Well, isn't that part of what Eldad and Medad?
Oh yeah, you're right.
possibly have?
Yes. So they kind of know. Yes, they kind of know. They kind of know. Or
So
maybe
they're
they
not
know.
ready to leave the house yet.
They're not ready to leave the house yet. They need mommy making their bed and their
Yeah.
breakfast and everything. Yeah. And you know what? The people that are not ready won't go. So this isn't, yikes, we're afraid of the... So now when you think of the giants in that context, you think it's a giant, overwhelming place to be. Everything's going to overwhelm us. The fruits are overwhelming. The trees are overwhelming. The work is overwhelming. Not in the physical sense we're afraid of the monster. Are we up to task? Now this, by the way, also comes back to Moshe, when they came to ask Moshe, can we go? And Moshe said, let me ask God. And God says to them, like we chuckled, like a mom would say, I'm not telling you what to do. If you want, do it. If you don't want, don't do it. The word is used, lida'atcha. Lida'atcha means according to your understanding, according to your knowledge. And what God is telling Moshe at this time is, up until now, I was spoon feeding everybody. Do this, don't do that. Do this, don't do that. Now, God says, upon entering the land, you all are now going to have to use lida'atcha. You are going to have to use, of course, in the spirit of everything I've taught you, and in the spirit of everything I've nurtured and molded you to believe and to understand, to be able to take a look at something neutral and say, is this in sync with what I've been taught or not? In other words, now it's time for you to use your da'at. Or, in another way, lida'atcha, according to the knowledge of Moshe, or according to the understanding of Moshe, meaning the Jewish leadership. That Jews now have to be sensitive to Jewish leadership. That we have to understand that this may not say black and white in the Torah, but the Jewish leaders' ideas are now going to help us figure out the right and the wrong. Because there will be many there will be many precedences, things that we have not previously encountered, and now we have to use an element of the da'at, of the understanding of the leadership, or even within our own da'at, we will now have to take what we know, what we've learned, what we've been taught, and employ it in the service of all kinds of things that we haven't experienced before. That the going into the land is we're changing gears. We are going from an embryonic state into a human being with all our full capacities, and we're going to have to be able to use our own das. Is this right? Is this wrong? And that's why even with sending these scouts, God is already saying, whatever you want, whatever you think. If you think it's going to be good, further your cause, send them. If you think it's not going to further your cause, don't send them. Now, in and of itself, it wasn't a bad thing. And we see 40 years later, it turned out to be a beautiful thing. Caleb and Pinchas did a beautiful job. But many people at this point were not ready. They weren't ready for it yet. And therefore, they were stuck behind. So of the individuals that went, Pinchas passed the test. He went into the land. Caleb passed the test. He went into the land. Joshua passed the test, was mature enough. He went into the land. By the way, all the women of this generation, imagine the what do you call it? What's the word? For the
Like a buzz or like the.
no, the makeup of the people. You have
The demographic.
the demographic. Thank you. You have all the elderly women who didn't die, but of course all the men who did. Their husbands did. They were all in this. You have this whole demographic of old ladies, and you have the new generation and a few leftovers from the previous generation. So it was a very interesting demographic. Thank you for the word. Okay, let's continue reading. We are past our time, ladies. At the end of 40 days, they returned from scouting the land. They went with bad intentions, and again, what were those bad intentions? On the simple level, it was we don't want to go. We want to be safe. We want to be spoiled. But in the inner idea, it was that they didn't want. They were afraid, or they were not comfortable, or they were mistaken in what God's. This I hesitated to say this, and so I neglected to say this. They were misinformed. They were mistaken about what God's purpose in the world for them was. It's not to sit in the womb and be taken care of and experience spirituality and godliness. It's to go out there in the world, like we learned, for example, from Joseph. Joseph, as opposed to his brothers. His brothers lived in a little cocoon, took care of the animals, lived in a safe place with their father, learned and didn't have any interaction with the outside world, and everything was good and happy and spiritual. God said, no, that's not what I'm looking for. I want you guys to go out into the world that defies God, and where it's a problem to find God and spirituality, and yet you have the power. I have empowered you with the Torah and the mitzvahs to go out there and to transform a world that seems like it is opposing God, to prove and to show and to cultivate and nurture the aspects of the world that will make it amenable and receptive to godliness. It's a big job, and they didn't want to do it, or they were afraid, or they didn't understand that this was the bottom line.
So God didn't handpick these kids. The tribes did, right? They selected them. So were they wrong? I mean, did they pick the wrong leaders to go forth? I mean, they were supposed to be the cream of the cream.
They were the
Right.
cream of the cream, and they had been their leaders for all these years.
What happened?
So this is what happened.
Yeah.
There was a disconnect. It's easy to believe, like, wouldn't it be great if we could all sit here all day
Oh, yeah.
and just study? Like, wouldn't that be great, where we didn't have to worry about laundry or
Right.
cooking
Right.
or educating anyone or going to the grocery store or dealing with angry tenants? I mean, I'm just making it up, or customers. We could just, like, wow, wouldn't this be amazing? Yeah, it would be amazing, but that's not what God wants us to be doing. He wants us to be out there transforming the world.
Right.
Where do you get the energy from it? You always got to come into these little groups and study and see, build up your muscle, and you need to spend time in prayer and re-energize. But then you got to go out there to the streets, and you got to make the world a godly place. It's much harder than just sitting here and looking at the world from the outside and understanding it all and enjoying it and appreciating it. But God said, that's not what I want. I want the world transformed, and I need you to do it. So it's a learning curve, and so they weren't ready for that. They weren't ready for that lesson.